My name is Leon Carter. I'm 58 years old and a major in the United States Army. For the last 32 years, I've served in Special Systems Division, the kind of unit that doesn't make headlines or recruitment posters. We don't wear medals on our chests. We wear access codes in our heads. That night, like so many before, I was alone in the command center, eyes scanning 3 separate screens, each glowing back at me in silence. The hum of old servers filled the room like background noise from a life that had long since stopped celebrating its players. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale yellow on metal walls that hadn't been painted in a decade. It was past 2 a.m., and the rest of the base was dead quiet. Just me, the machines, and a diagnostic script I'd been tuning since dusk. One of the newer encryption nodes had started cycling its handshake protocol too fast, threatening to stall the whole network. I had already written the patch in my head hours ago. I just wanted to make sure it didn't break anything else. That's the thing about old systems. You can't rush trust. I sipped from a cracked mug that used to have the unit's logo on it. It had faded in the wash years ago. No one replaced it. Like most things down here, it kept going long after it was expected to. I guess I did too. The truth is, I wasn't supposed to still be on active duty. I had offers to consult. A few civilian contractors threw numbers at me that looked good on paper. But I stayed. Maybe out of loyalty, maybe out of fear that I wouldn't know who I was without the blinking lights and the endless alerts. And yet, as I sat there adjusting systems that no one above ground even knew the names of, it hit me: no commendation, no ceremony. No official letter marking 3 decades of service. Just a system ticket with my initials in the corner and a blinking cursor waiting for input. I wasn't invisible, not exactly. I was worse than invisible. I was expected. That expectation weighed heavier than any gear I'd ever carried. It didn't matter that I'd held this place together through 3 base transitions, 2 cyber attacks, and 1 power grid meltdown that should have taken us offline for weeks. There was always a younger officer to promote, always a committee to thank someone else. I was the guy who made sure no one ever had to stay up at night worrying. And because I was always there, no one remembered I was. I looked at the monitors again, green across the board. All systems nominal, no applause, no acknowledgement, just the quiet affirmation that I was doing the job no one asked about until it stopped working. I leaned back in my chair, listened to the fan spin behind the panels, and let the silence do what it does best. Remind me I was still here, even if no one else noticed. 5 years ago, they promised me a retirement bonus. Not just a thank you card or a framed certificate, but an actual financial reward. A number. One that was supposed to show they recognized what I'd done for them. The terms were simple. Deliver 2 consecutive deployments of the new missile defense interface, on schedule and fully integrated. I didn't just meet the requirements. I built redundancies they didn't ask for. I stayed up nights rewriting code that no contractor wanted to touch. I made it bulletproof because I knew soldiers' lives would one day rely on what I built. When the second deployment cleared final audit, I didn't celebrate. I just filed the report, signed my initials, and moved on to the next system patch. I assumed the paperwork would catch up, that the wheels would turn, and someone in a higher office would nod and sign off on what was due. But nothing came. No message. No deposit. Not even a mention in the quarterly updates. At first, I checked the system weekly, then monthly. Eventually, I stopped checking. I told myself maybe it had been deferred, tied to another fiscal year, lost in the stack of approvals somewhere. I gave them every excuse I could think of. The truth sat with me late at night. It wasn't just about the money, it was the silence. The complete absence of recognition after years of work no one else understood, but everyone else benefited from. I wasn't waiting for praise. I just wanted to know I mattered to the people I'd sacrificed so much for. It's strange how something so quiet can feel like such a loud betrayal. I didn't ask for much, but that silence, that willful forgetting, it told me more than any memo ever could. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped being seen as a man and had become just another system log. Always on, always reliable, and completely overlooked. When Major Jordan Remmer walked into the command room for the first time, I knew exactly what kind of leader he would be. Fresh-pressed uniform, crisp salute, and that sharp look of someone who thought they'd been sent to clean up a mess that didn't exist. He was barely 30, full of textbook knowledge and Pentagon lingo, but no scars to show he'd ever been in the trenches of real systems failure. He never asked how anything worked. He just started rewriting protocols, pushing new access structures without even consulting the people who built them. My name disappeared from the escalation chain within 2 weeks. One morning, I logged in and found my highest-level credentials revoked. No explanation, just a lockout screen where I used to have full access. I tried not to take it personally. I told myself maybe it was part of some larger reorg. But the way he avoided eye contact in meetings said otherwise. He never addressed me directly unless something was broken. And even then, it was always framed like I was the problem, not the one keeping things together. He called my workstation a legacy node during one briefing. Smiled while saying it too, like it was a harmless joke. But I could feel the shift in the room. People started copying him, questioning every decision I made, second-guessing things they'd never cared about before. It wasn't long before my reports were sent through 2 layers of junior officers for approval. Reports they used to trust me to write and implement on my own. In private memos, he flagged my role as cost-heavy, suggested outsourcing some of my duties to contractors, said my position was due for reclassification. I had spent over 3 decades keeping this place from falling apart, and now I was being labeled as overhead, not because I failed, but because I reminded them of what they didn't understand and couldn't control. He didn't even try to hide it. To him, I wasn't a leader or a veteran. I was just another line item waiting to be erased. They held the unveiling in Hangar 4, the one with the glass windows nobody ever cleaned. Rows of folding chairs lined up under flickering lights, all facing a massive tarp-draped frame that clearly held the new missile system. I showed up in my standard issue jacket and boots, same ones I wore during the first field test of the original platform. No medals, no ribbon bar, just me, standing along the edge near a supply crate like I didn't belong. Everyone else wore pressed blues or sharp grays. Photographers milled around like this was some kind of launch party. I kept my hands in my pockets and watched the younger techs fidget with their badges. Most of them had never even seen the inside of the deployment module, let alone calibrated a live guidance relay under pressure. Major Remmer took the podium like he'd been rehearsing in front of a mirror for weeks. Polished speech, a few forced jokes. Then he started listing the team members who made the system possible. My name came near the end. No rank, no title, just a passing nod to technical support. Before I could even process the slight, he kept going. Announced to the whole room that, effective immediately, I would be transitioning from command duties to a technical advisory role. Said it was part of an efficiency realignment. Said it like it was a promotion. The room didn't cheer. They just stayed quiet. A few eyes flicked over to me, unsure if this was a joke or some kind of internal politics playing out in real time. I didn't say a word. I didn't move, but something in my chest pulled tight, like a screw stripped clean from turning too long. I wasn't even looking at Jordan anymore. I was staring at the damn missile. The same one I had helped design from the first concept file. Watching someone else take credit, erase my name, and then strip me of my command like it was a logistical update. The applause that followed felt like white noise. I stood there, small in the corner of the very system I had carried on my back for years, stripped of my role, not because I failed, but because I reminded him of everything he didn't earn. I didn't wait for the ceremony to end. As soon as they moved on to the press photos and handshake lineup, I stepped away from the wall and walked toward the exit. No one stopped me. No one even called my name. My boots echoed on the hangar floor, louder than anything the PA system was spitting out. I didn't rush, didn't drag my feet either. Just a steady pace toward the door, the same way I'd walked out of every mission that didn't go the way it should. Halfway there, I turned around. Remmer was laughing with a visiting general, his back to me. A few people noticed I was leaving. Their eyes followed, but their mouths stayed shut. Before I stepped through the threshold, I let my voice carry across the room. Not loud, just enough to cut through the scripted chatter. Good luck launching without authorization. Those signatures don't come cheap. I didn't wait for a reaction. Didn't need one. The silence behind me was enough. My clearance wasn't just a formality. It was embedded in every layer of the launch protocols. You couldn't bypass it, you couldn't fake it, and you sure as hell couldn't run a demo without it. Outside, the air was cold but clean. No flashing lights, no fake smiles. Just the sound of my own breath and the click of the security gate as it locked behind me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel forgotten. I felt like a man who had just reminded the whole damn room who built the engine they were pretending to drive. I didn't burn a single thing on my way out. I just took the matchbook with me. When I got home, I didn't slam doors or pace the floor. I hung up my coat, washed the road dust off my hands, and went straight to the desk in the basement. The lights came on like they always did, humming low above the 3 monitors I'd used for years. First, I logged into the vault. One by one, I deleted every credential tied to my profile, nothing abrupt, just proper offboarding, the way it should be done when a clearance ends. Then I moved on to the access tokens. Revoked them clean. Not a single one force expired. No shortcuts. No backdoors left open. Just a full sweep of the tools that once gave me control. I opened the key manager last. That's where the signature blocks lived. The ones embedded into the launch pipeline, the heartbeat checks, the fallback systems. I hovered over the last entry. My name was still on it, tagged with the designation that used to mean something. The system prompted me. Removing this signature may affect dependent services. I read the line twice, then clicked confirm. A quiet flicker on the screen. That was it. Clean, legal, accountable. I didn't do it to hurt them. That thought never crossed my mind. I did it because it was the right thing to do. When someone walks away from a system, they don't leave the door ajar. They lock it behind them and turn in the key. There was no virus, no planted traps, no clever scripts hidden behind harmless file names. Just the absence of me. The quiet that follows when the job is done and the lights go out properly. I leaned back in my chair and looked around the room. The machines were still but not broken, just waiting. Like old dogs who understood when it was time to rest. I didn't sabotage a thing. I just took my hands off the controls and stepped away. If that makes the system crash, maybe it wasn't as stable as they thought, and maybe the real damage was never about what I did, but what they never learned to do without me. At exactly 0400 hours, alarms started firing across the test command center. It was supposed to be a routine startup for the missile guidance simulation, but instead, the main console froze mid-boot. Within seconds, every terminal showed red alerts stacked like dominoes. Engineers scrambled to trace the fault. Nothing responded. Secure subsystems flagged missing certificates. Backup sequences stalled. The system needed a signature to proceed, and the profile tied to that signature no longer existed. Jordan stormed into the room, half-dressed, eyes bloodshot, demanding answers. He barked at the technicians, asked why no one had noticed the failure sooner. Someone mentioned my name, the room went quiet. He snapped back fast, blamed a cyber attack, called it foreign interference, told command to escalate immediately, but the logs told a different story. No breaches, no anomalies, just a complete, clean vacuum where one authorization used to be. By 0500, the Department of Defense was on the line. They wanted status reports. Command chains lit up. Secure phones rang nonstop. But no one could touch the system. Every recovery path circled back to a revoked key. Mine. Jordan paced like a man trapped in his own echo. He tried resetting control, but every override hit the same wall. The core launch script required a multi-factor signature tied to a now deactivated identity. No one else had been provisioned for it. They'd skipped the step. Thought I'd always be there. Outside the control center, the base was on alert. Texts from Washington were en route, But deep down, everyone in that room already knew the truth. There was no sabotage, no enemy breach, just a system that finally demanded the one thing they no longer had. And me? I was sipping coffee in my kitchen, watching it unfold from the edge of a quiet screen. Not with pride, not with malice, just a steady kind of knowing. Because systems don't lie, they just respond. And this one was simply telling the truth in red blinking letters. The call came just after dawn, the kind of hour where the world feels quiet enough to listen. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew the voice the second it spoke. Alan Briggs, 4-star general, a man who once stood shoulder to shoulder with me in operations that never made the news. His voice wasn't rushed, but it carried weight. Jordan's out, systems down, we need you back. Whatever you want. He didn't ask how I was or dance around the mess. He knew better. Briggs had seen enough to know when something broke beyond protocol. His tone wasn't pleading, but it wasn't commanding either. It was something in between. A man who finally understood the cost of ignoring the right people. I didn't say a word, just held the phone in my hand and stared out the window. The sky was gray, heavy with the kind of silence that follows too many wrong decisions. I walked across the room, unlocked the safe in the corner, and pulled out the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded once. On it, in my handwriting, was the final master key signature. The one they never thought they'd need because they assumed I'd never leave. I held it for a long moment. This wasn't leverage. It wasn't revenge. It was the proof that for 32 years, I had been the last line. Not by title, not by rank, but by trust. Without that key, every launch, every test, every secure function sat frozen. Not because I broke anything, but because I was the one who built it to require more than just clearance. It needed care. It needed judgment. It needed me. That was the twist. I didn't need to sabotage the system. I didn't have to touch a single line of code. My absence was the event. My silence was the shutdown. Briggs was still on the line. He didn't repeat himself. He didn't beg. He knew what he was asking, and he knew I had every reason to say no. But he also knew something else. When the mission matters, I don't walk away from the people who still carry the load. Not the politics, not the titles. The people. I looked down at that slip of paper. The weight of 32 years in one fragile fold. I hadn't lost my power when they stripped my title. They just stopped understanding where power really lives. I didn't give Briggs an answer. Not over the phone. Not in that moment. Instead, I opened my laptop, pulled up an old private repo I had posted the night they sidelined me. It was all still there. Every procedure, every key rotation path, system logic maps, cert regeneration steps, even the most obscure patches I had written at 3 a.m. over the years. I added one new line to the bottom of the README file. For those who still respect the mission, then I sent the link. No calls, no speeches. Just a quiet exit through the same door I had always held open for others. That was enough. I didn't wait for their reply. I didn't refresh the status page. I closed the laptop and stepped back into the present. Not the past where I spent decades cleaning up other people's chaos, but the now, the place where people ask before they assume, where legacy isn't treated like waste. The lab at Halifax Systems was smaller, quieter. No dress codes, no rigid titles, but the work mattered. There were no generals, just minds that valued precision. When I spoke, they listened. When I built something, they said thank you. That's where I stayed. Not to prove anything, but because I finally remembered what it felt like to be part of something that doesn't take your silence for granted. Something that understands dignity doesn't come from a patch on your shoulder. It comes from being seen, heard, respected. I learned a lot in the quiet that followed. Not all noise is communication. Not all movement is progress. And sometimes, the only way to show a system is broken is to walk away and let it fail without you. I never wanted revenge. I just wanted the weight I carried to be noticed. Turns out, the absence of that weight makes more noise than I ever could.